They said one person couldn't change the flow of a galaxy. They said the war between Kronar and Zephyrian, that had lasted for millennia, could never end. But when Asher, a newcomer who had been in interstellar politics for less than a decade, accepted 3 days to find a path to peace, both empires faced a life-or-death choice: continue destroying each other, or learn to see into each other's hearts. The year was 2487. The intergalactic war between the Kronar Empire and the Zephyrian Empire had raged for nearly 1,000 years. In the diplomatic station, Vox Ultima, a military-civilian base orbiting a typical planet, delegates gathered for peace talks once again. Earth was concerned. The United Nations had just officially joined the Deathworld Alliance, but intervening in negotiations between these two powerful empires was not simple. Asher, a xenobiologist appointed as a humanitarian envoy, had been tasked with salvaging, at the invitation of the Zephyrian Emperor, a 3-day negotiation intended to end the war. Asher hailed from Earth, skilled in extraterrestrial archaeology and culture. His mind was scientific, coldly observant, but his eccentric heart harbored doubts about whether the old diplomatic methods could bring peace or merely endless war. Ambassador Grimjaw represented Kronar. His scarred skin told a history of battles, symbolizing the military strength and honor of his people. Princess Liesel represented the Zephyrians. Her blue, luminous skin and horns that glowed with her emotions symbolized spiritual purity among her kind. High Priestess Seraphine was the guardian of the Zephyrian sacred site ritual. The conflict between Kronar and Zephyrian stemmed from deep ancestral differences. Kronar revered war scars as badges of honor and protection. Zephyrians worshipped unblemished beauty and sacred sight as sacred rituals. Eye contact was only permitted in the most secret ceremonies. History recorded that a mistaken first contact incident 1,000 years ago had sparked a galaxy-wide war. Kronar looked directly. Zephyrians were disgusted, after which they tortured each other without mercy. Asher entered the main negotiation room in Vox Ultima, where the round conference table was carved with the symbols of the 3 races: Kronar, Zephyrian, human. The moment Ambassador Grimjaw's eyes met Princess Liesel's by accident, observed by Asher, everything exploded. "You dare look at me like prey!" Liesel's voice was filled with anger. "I was only showing respect according to my people's customs," Grimjaw replied, not understanding why she was upset. Grimjaw angrily slammed the table, sending a beam of light streaking across the scars on his face. Papers and tools flew in all directions, and the conference session quickly descended into chaos. Emperor Vorak's voice, deep and powerful as the galaxy itself, came through the sound system. "I will not allow this riot to repeat itself. Asher, you have 3 days to prove you can end the war. If you fail, both races will continue to slaughter each other." Asher's goal was to prove that all disputes originated from cultural misunderstandings, not territory or resources, and to win through the hearts of both sides, finding a way for Kronar and Zephyrian to recognize each other's shared values. In the Kronar training room, the artificial gravity was doubled. 2 Kronar warriors engaged in strict martial arts. Each slash was honored when it drew blood. The wounds kissed as a testament to courage. Asher observed, taking notes on each scar and its story of achievement. The neck scar from saving a comrade from a flesh-eating beast. The chest scar from protecting the ritual crown. In dialogue with General Bloodmark, whose body was covered in a network of scars, Asher learned more about Kronar culture. "Among Kronar, scars are vows to family," Bloodmark explained. "No scars, no value." Asher silently noted, glorifying violence or glorifying sacrifice. In the Zephyrian meditation hall, the walls seemed alive, glowing rhythmically with the breath of the Zephyrian monks. Liesel sat motionless in a circle of bioluminescence, light reflected on her head, white as mist. Asher snuck in with Liesel's permission, but when he failed to observe proper ritual, Seraphine appeared, You are not worthy to look directly into our souls. In dialogue with High Priestess Seraphine, whose eyes glowed blue-purple, Asher learned about Zephyrian values. For Zephyrians, unauthorized gazes are sacrilege, Seraphine explained. Asher whispered to Lysel. So Kronar honors scars as glory, while your people honor unblemished purity? Asher shared a brief exchange with Lysel, revealing that it all stems from a mere look 1,000 years ago. Kronar respect was interpreted as sacrilege by Zephyrians. When Zephyrians displayed their beliefs, it provoked Kronar's fury. Lysel was confused, her gaze softening. For the first time, she found someone who understood her pain. Asher entered the station's secret archives. He reviewed the first contact report from 1,000 years ago. Images showed Ambassador Korth, Kronar, entering the Zephyrian hall, bowing to show respect. But this action was misinterpreted as looking directly at Princess Saravia. History recorded that when the Zephyrian princess, Saravia, screamed in panic, the Kronar felt divinely insulted and immediately executed her. They took the luminous whip and killed Korth's guard, then retaliated brutally. Asher suddenly realized the war wasn't about resources. It was merely a misunderstanding of cultural language. Lysel came knocking on Asher's private chamber door. In their first intimate scene together, Lysel revealed, "Even a very brief unauthorized glance makes my heart tremble to the point of fainting." Asher said seriously, "Your father wants 3 days to end the war, but I want to use your heart, to see how you feel when I look directly at you." The electric spark moment. Lysel felt a momentary flutter, an accidental touch that made both of them feel a strange electric charge. Asher organized alternating discussion sessions. In the first session, Asher looked directly at each Kronar, Representatives Grimjaw and Bloodmark, for 3 seconds, immediately explaining. In human culture, direct eye contact demonstrates honesty, respect. Grimjaw was surprised but nodded. At the same time, Asher glanced briefly at Seraphine and Lysel, explaining, "People don't think I'm cleansing their souls, but rather, I need to confirm our shared existence." Lysel hesitated, but gradually understood. Contrasting reactions. Kronar gradually accepted the explanation. Even though they still considered scars honorable, they saw that direct looking wasn't necessarily an insult. Zephyrian changed from shocked and hateful to slightly uncomfortable but acceptable. Asher staged a scene. He hired a Kronar actor with a retractable blade sword to simulate an assassination attempt. In the next morning's session, suddenly, a sword flashed, slashing at Asher, advising the audience that this is the most precious life, the life of the bridge between the two empires. People naturally huddled together. Grimjaw shouted orders for his guards to surround the assassin. Seraphine performed emergency breathing, ordering Zephyrian healers to provide medical care. The chaotic but pivotal scene. Kronar and Zephyrian, enemies for a millennium, eagerly rushed to save Asher, from repelling enemies to rescuing the wounded in just seconds. In the medical room, Kronar guards stood outside the door, Zephyrians assisting inside, an unprecedented image of harmony. Grimjaw's emotional words, "This person is the bridge. We cannot let him die." Seraphine whispered to Lysel, "If we don't save him, we will return to the ocean of hatred." Emperor Vorak appeared via the holosystem. "Today's scene proves what I wanted. 2 races. Look not at enemies with fear, but with respect. Asher, you have demonstrated that the greatest danger comes not from weapons, but from misunderstandings." Delegates from both sides sat intermingled, no longer clinging to defensive postures. Grimjaw voluntarily explained the meaning of each battle scar, while Seraphine explained the value of purity and sacred sight, with 2 questions. What makes a scar most treasured? What is the most sacred eye movement? When both sides realized, Kronar honored protecting the weak, taking wounds to protect. Zephyrians worship destroying evil in nature, participating in purification rituals. They discovered the true origin. Both valued sacrifice for community, but used different languages. Princess Kira, Liesel's younger sister, volunteered to participate in the Kronar scarification ritual, taking a martial scar to show her contribution to peace. Grimjaw agreed to undergo the sacred site from Seraphine to prove he respected the belief in purity. Result: Kronar and Zephyrian witnessed firsthand the circle of cultural sharing. Whoever received whichever ritual honored the most precious element of the other. In a small hall, Asher proposed trade agreement. Kronar would provide precious minerals. Zephyrian would share biotechnology. Cultural exchange. Send language and ritual representatives to learn from each other. Military alliance. Establish joint bases to protect borders, preventing others from exploiting old disputes. All delegates nodded, an atmosphere of wanting to celebrate spreading among them. The signing ceremony took place in the Zephyrian Divine Hall, glittering with luminous plants. Attendees included Emperor Vorak, Ambassador Grimjaw, High Priestess Seraphine, General Bloodmark, Princess Liesel, Asher, along with representatives of many other races. Vorak's declaration. Today, a 1,000-year wish has closed. The Kronar hegemony and Zephyrian Empire now declare balance, peace, and joining the Intergalactic Alliance network. Scenes of cheering, scar-honoring dances alongside bioluminescence dancing, a beautiful symbol of harmony. The wedding between Asher and Princess Liesel featured multicultural covenants. Asher wore an Earth ceremonial suit, adorned with Deus coordinate fabric, revealing a skillful cut on his arm, a temporary scar, created by General Bloodmark, showing he accepted Kronar values. Liesel wore traditional Zephyrian clothing, her horns reflecting rainbow light, pearls on her forehead emitting gentle bioluminescence. When she looked into Asher's soul, her sacred sight, flame spread, proving she gave her entire Zephyrian soul to him. Vows. Asher, voice trembling but sincere. In this moment, under the flame of mutual respect, I vow to keep this scar as a reminder. Sacrifice must be used to protect peace. I vow to look at you with my whole heart, as you have given me sacred sight, the most sacred gift of the Zephyrian race. Liesel, voice echoing like singing. You risked your life to save 2 races. I vow to offer this sacred sight, so that together we illuminate the future. Each gaze I give you is an eternal testament to peace. Conclusion. 2 traditional ceremonial cloths from Kronar and Zephyrian were tied together, symbolizing an inseparable bond. 3 months later, Asher became the Intergalactic Cultural Advisor, appointed by the Intergalactic Assembly. Liesel accompanied him as Zephyrian Peace Ambassador. Future vision. They embarked on the Unity Starship, their first destination a distant colony under attack, collaborating to provide aid. Final words. Asher looked up at the starry sky, thinking to himself, the war doesn't just end today. The war lies in every heart willing to try to understand each other. And if a person like me can change the galaxy, then anyone can. Asher entered the main negotiation chamber of Vox Ultima with calculated steps, feeling the weight of 1,000 years of hatred pressing down on his shoulders. The circular room was designed as a neutral space, its walls adorned with holographic displays showing the home worlds of both empires. Stark, battle-scarred Myrak, contrasting with the luminous ocean-covered Ovada. At the center stood a round table crafted from ancient materials, its surface intricately carved with the symbols of 3 races, the jagged runes of Kronar, the flowing light patterns of Zephyrian, and the geometric simplicity of human design, bridging them both. The air was thick with tension as Ambassador Grimjaw of Kronar entered from the eastern door. Standing over 7 feet tall, his gray-red skin was a tapestry of ceremonial scars and battle wounds. Each mark told a story, The curved slash across his throat was awarded for rescuing his squad from cave crawlers on Nexus 7, while the star-shaped pattern on his chest commemorated his defense of the royal ceremonial crown during the Battle of Twin Moons. From the western entrance glided Princess Liesel of Zephyrian. Her skin glowed with a soft blue luminescence that pulsed gently with her breathing. The delicate horns crowning her head emitted subtle shifts of color with each emotion. Currently, a wary violet tinged with diplomatic formality. Unlike the hardened Kronar, her unblemished skin was considered the highest form of beauty and spiritual achievement among her people. "Excellent. You've both arrived on time," Asher said, his voice betraying none of the anxiety he felt. "Earth appreciates your willingness to attempt negotiation once more." High Priestess Seraphine entered behind Liesel, her ceremonial robes flowing like liquid starlight. The ancient Zephyrian's eyes were hidden behind a translucent veil, as tradition dictated that her sacred gaze could only be shared during holy ceremonies. "The Zephyrian Empire seeks harmony," Princess Liesel began, her voice musical, yet formal. "We have endured nearly 10 centuries of bloodshed. Perhaps the presence of Earth's Deathworld Alliance might finally—" Her words cut off abruptly as Ambassador Grimjaw shifted in his seat, his eyes momentarily meeting hers in what was, to him, a gesture of attentive respect. "You dare!" Liesel's voice transformed from melodious to razor-sharp. Her horns flashed crimson with outrage. "You dare look at me like prey!" Grimjaw's brow furrowed in confusion, then hardened with his own indignation. "I was only showing respect according to my people's customs," he rumbled, genuinely perplexed by her reaction. "1,000 years," Seraphine hissed, "and still you violate our most sacred beliefs." Grimjaw slammed his fist against the table. The impact sent light streaking across his facial scars, illuminating them with kinetic energy that the Kronar could channel through their battle markings. "And 1,000 years of your people treating our highest form of honor as abomination." Papers and digital tablets went flying as both delegations rose to their feet. Guards from each side stepped forward, weapons humming to life with ominous energy signatures. Asher remained seated, studying the escalation with clinical detachment. Not surprised, merely disappointed. This was exactly why traditional diplomacy had failed for centuries. Then, a voice resonated throughout the chamber, so deep and powerful it seemed to vibrate through the very atoms of the station. Emperor Vorak of Zephyria, speaking through the communication system from his palace, thousands of light-years away. "I will not allow this riot to repeat itself." The Emperor's tone was final, brooking no argument. "Asher of Earth, you were recommended as someone who understands both cultures at their most fundamental level. You have 3 days to prove you can end this war. If you fail, both races will continue their path of mutual slaughter, and Earth's Deathworld Alliance will be forced to choose sides." Asher felt every eye in the room turn to him. "3 days, Your Majesty?" he asked, his scientific mind already calculating possibilities. "What would you consider proof of success?" "Show me that our people can coexist without violence. Demonstrate that my daughter and Ambassador Grimjaw can remain in the same room without threats of galactic war. Find the truth behind our hatred, and you will have succeeded. You have until the 3rd sunset of Vox Ultima." As the transmission ended, Asher stood slowly. He looked from the furious Kronar to the indignant Zephyrians. "It seems we have our assignment," he said calmly. "Let us begin by understanding exactly what happened just now." The training facility of the Kronar delegation occupied the entire eastern wing of Vox Ultima's 4th level. Asher felt his body strain against the artificial gravity set to twice Earth standard. Comfortable for Kronar physiology, but challenging for humans. 2 massive warriors circled each other on the central mat, their muscular bodies covered in ritual scars that glowed with faint energy. The older fighter, a veteran with gray streaks in his dark mane, feinted left before landing a powerful blow that sliced across his opponent's shoulder. Blood welled from the wound, and rather than showing pain, the wounded warrior beamed with pride. The elder fighter bowed and pressed his forehead to the fresh cut, a gesture of honor that acknowledged the younger one's willingness to bleed for his training. General Bloodmark, head of the Kronar military delegation, noticed Asher observing from the doorway and beckoned him forward. The general's body bore more scars than any Kronar Asher had ever seen, a living record of battles spanning nearly 2 centuries. "You wish to understand us, Earthman?" Bloodmark's voice was gravel wrapped in steel. "Then watch and learn." Asher nodded, tapping notes into his datapad as the training continued. Each scar was a story. He realized the Kronar didn't fight merely to inflict pain, but to earn the right to carry visible proof of their courage and sacrifice. "The neck slash," Asher said, pointing to a particular mark on Bloodmark's throat. "How did you earn that one?" Bloodmark's fingers traced the jagged line with something approaching reverence. "Cave crawler attack on Proxima Colony. 5 of my soldiers were trapped. I held the beast's maw open with my bare hands while they escaped." His eyes gleamed with pride. 3 days in regeneration chambers, but I refused complete healing. This mark reminds the families of those soldiers that I kept my oath to bring their children home. And here, Asher indicated a star-shaped pattern, similar to Grimjaw's chest marking. The Royal Crown Ceremony. An assassination attempt on our Emperor. Bloodmark straightened imperceptibly. "I took the plasma blast meant for him. This pattern is given to all who shed blood in defense of our sovereignty." Asher continued his documentation. Mind racing. "Among Kronar, scars are vows to family and community." Bloodmark continued, watching Asher's reaction. "No scars, no value. We prove our worth through our willingness to bleed for what matters." As Asher left the training facility, he murmured to himself, "Glorifying violence or glorifying sacrifice, the distinction matters." The meditation chamber of the Zephyrian delegation couldn't have been more different from the Kronar training grounds. Located in the western wing, the chamber's walls pulsed with living bioluminescence that synchronized with the collective breathing of the Zephyrian monks seated in a perfect circle. At the center sat Princess Lisel, motionless within a ring of intensified light. Her horns emitted a calm blue radiance that created dancing patterns across the ceiling. Unlike the aggressive energy of the Kronar facility, here, everything flowed in perfect harmony, each breath, each subtle movement part of an intricate whole. Asher had gained entry only through Lisel's personal invitation, delivered in secret after their chaotic first meeting. He stood silently at the threshold, careful not to disturb the meditation ritual. The princess opened her eyes, though she carefully avoided looking directly at Asher, and gestured for him to approach. As he took a step forward, a figure materialized from the shadows. High Priestess Seraphine moved with unnatural grace, as though floating above the floor rather than walking upon it. Her eyes, now unveiled within the sacred space, emanated a purple-blue light so intense that Asher instinctively looked away. "You are not worthy to look directly into our souls," she stated flatly. "Your presence here violates ancient tradition, even with the princess's invitation." "High Priestess," Lisel interrupted gently, "he seeks understanding. Is that not the foundation of our faith?" Seraphine's expression remained impassive, but she inclined her head slightly. "Understanding begins with respect for boundaries. For Zephyrians, unauthorized gazes are sacrilege. Our eyes are the windows to our innermost essence. To look without permission is to violate the spirit itself." Asher absorbed this information, careful to direct his gaze at the floor. "May I ask why? What harm comes from being seen?" The temperature in the room seemed to drop several degrees as Seraphine considered him. "The uninitiated gaze disrupts our soul light, the bioluminescence that flows through our bodies. It is like..." a hand roughly grabbing at our most delicate internal organs. Painful, invasive. Only through the sacred ritual of light sharing can one be prepared to see, or be seen, without causing spiritual damage. When Seraphine drifted away to attend to other monks, Asher whispered to Lysel, "So Kronar honors scars as glory, while your people honor unblemished purity and controlled vision." Lysel's horns flickered with surprise at his insight. "Yes, to remain unmarked is to show one has navigated life's challenges with perfect harmony. To control one's gaze is to respect the soul boundaries of others." "A perfect conceptual opposition," Asher noted. "Born, perhaps, from a misunderstanding." The princess tilted her head, curiosity evident in the shifting colors of her horns. "What do you mean?" "It all stems from a mere look 1,000 years ago," Asher explained softly. Kronar respect, direct eye contact, was interpreted as sacrilege by Zephyrians. When Zephyrians displayed their beliefs through averted gazes, Kronar interpreted it as dishonor and cowardice, provoking their fury. Lysel's bioluminescence flickered erratically, her horns shifting from blue to a confused violet. For the first time, her eyes lifted to nearly meet Asher's before darting away. "You speak as though you were there," she whispered. "I've studied the historical records. Both sides remember the events, but neither understands the other's perspective." He hesitated, then added, "Your people's pain makes perfect sense, as does theirs. Both are valid. Both are tragic." Lysel fell silent, but Asher noticed her breathing had changed. Her light pulsed with a different rhythm, as though his words had touched something fundamental within her understanding. That night, Asher gained access to the station's restricted archives through his diplomatic credentials. The dimly lit chamber held physical records too sensitive to be stored in network systems, including the original first contact documentation between Kronar and Zephyrian civilizations. The yellowed pages and preserved holographic recordings told a story that matched neither empire's official history. Ambassador Korth of Kronar had entered the Zephyrian ceremonial hall, according to his own people's highest traditions. Head high, eyes forward, direct gaze intended to convey ultimate respect and honesty. But to Princess Saravia of Zephyria, this uninitiated gaze had been the equivalent of a violent, spiritual assault. Her screams of pain and violation had been interpreted by the Kronar as disgust at their appearance, a mortal insult to a culture that prized honorable scars. The recording showed the moment everything collapsed, Zephyrian guards rushing forward to shield their princess from the visual attack. Kronar, interpreting this as aggression and drawing weapons. The first blood spilled when a Zephyrian wielded a ceremonial light whip that sliced across a Kronar guard's face. 1,000 years of war, Asher murmured. Not over resources or territory or power, but because neither side understood the other's most sacred values. He was so absorbed in the records that he didn't hear the door slide open behind him. "What are you doing here?" Lysel's voice was barely above a whisper. Asher turned, careful to lower his eyes as he'd learned was respectful. Searching for the truth, the original misunderstanding that started everything. Lysel approached cautiously, her bioluminescence dimmed to its lowest setting. "And did you find it?" "I believe so." He gestured to the documents. "May I show you?" She hesitated, then nodded. "You may." For the next hour, they reviewed the historical records together. With each revelation, Lysel's horns shifted through shades of shock, sadness, and eventually, a contemplative green that Asher hadn't seen before. "A misinterpretation," she finally said. "All this death because we couldn't understand each other's intentions." "Cultural language is as important as spoken language," Asher replied. "Without translation, the most respectful act can seem like the greatest insult." Lysel was quiet for a long moment. Then, surprisingly, she asked, "Would you come to my quarters tomorrow? There is something I wish to discuss. Privately." The next evening, Asher stood outside Liesel's private chamber, hesitating before announcing his presence. When the door slid open, he was struck by the transformation of the space. Unlike the formal meditation chamber, here the bioluminescence was softer, more intimate, reminding him of Earth's twilight. Liesel sat on a curved seat that seemed to grow from the floor itself. Her ceremonial robes had been replaced with simpler attire, and her horns emitted a gentle, pulsing light that matched the room's ambiance. "Thank you for coming," she said, gesturing to a seat opposite her. "What we discussed yesterday, I've been unable to think of anything else." Asher nodded, taking the offered seat. "It changes everything, doesn't it? Knowing the war began from misunderstood respect, rather than intentional disrespect." "Yes." Her voice dropped lower. "I need to tell you something few outsiders know. The reason direct gazes affect us so profoundly." She seemed to gather her courage. "Even a very brief, unauthorized glance makes my heart tremble to the point of fainting. It's physiological, as well as spiritual. Our nervous systems are wired to respond intensely to eye contact. It's overwhelming, like an electric shock through our entire being." Asher leaned forward, fascinated. "That explains the extreme reaction at first contact. It wasn't merely cultural offense, it was actual physical pain." "Yes." Liesel's horns flickered with vulnerability. "Yet you humans exchange gazes constantly without harm. How is this possible?" "Different evolutionary paths," Asher explained. "For humans, eye contact developed as a trust mechanism. Looking away was once considered suspicious or dishonest. A contemplative silence fell between them. Finally, Asher spoke again, his voice thoughtful. "Your father wants 3 days to end the war. But I think the key isn't in formal negotiations. It's in understanding at the most fundamental level. I want to use your heart, to see how you feel when I look directly at you, after proper preparation and with your full consent." Liesel's bioluminescence flared in surprise. "That would be unprecedented." "As is this opportunity for peace." She considered for a long moment, her horns shifting through colors of contemplation. "It would require a modified ritual of preparation, and even then—" "I understand the risk," Asher said gently. "But sometimes peace requires courage." As he spoke, he reached for a data tablet on the table between them. Their hands touched briefly, accidentally, and both froze at the contact. An unmistakable spark passed between them, something beyond the normal static electricity of space stations. Liesel's horns flashed a bright pink before she quickly controlled them back to a neutral blue. "That was—" she began, then stopped. "Interesting," Asher finished, feeling his heart rate increase. "Very interesting." The next morning, Asher arranged separate but parallel cultural sessions. The Kronar delegation gathered in one chamber, the Zephyrians in another, with Asher moving between them to facilitate understanding. With the Kronar, he demonstrated a radical approach. Standing before Grimjaw and Bloodmark, he maintained direct eye contact for 3 full seconds with each warrior, a deliberate act that would have been unconscionable with Zephyrians. "In human culture," he explained, "direct eye contact demonstrates honesty and respect. We look directly at those we trust and honor." He gestured to the assembled Kronar. "Your tradition of direct gaze shares this foundation, the courage to show your true self without hiding." Grimjaw shifted uncomfortably. "Yet the Zephyrians recoil as if wounded by our respect." "Because to them, it is a wound," Asher explained. "Their nervous systems process visual contact differently. Imagine if someone tried to honor you by doing something that, to your physiology, felt like a knife between your ribs." The ambassador's expression shifted as understanding dawned. "They aren't rejecting our honor. They're responding to pain." "Precisely." In the Zephyrian chamber, Asher took a different approach. With Seraphine's reluctant permission, he demonstrated the human custom of brief, respectful eye contact with willing participants, carefully explaining the meaning behind each interaction. "When I look briefly at you," he told the assembled Zephyrians, "I'm not attempting to cleanse your soul or violate your essence. I'm acknowledging your existence and showing that I have nothing to hide. It's our way of confirming shared reality and intention." Lisel, present for this demonstration, watched with fascination. "So the Kronar, when they look directly, they're showing you the highest form of respect they know," Asher confirmed, not realizing it causes you distress. By day's end, the first subtle shifts had begun. The Kronar, while still considering their scars honorable marks of sacrifice, began to understand that direct gazing could be modified when interacting with Zephyrians. The Zephyrians, though still uncomfortable with direct eye contact, started to perceive it not as deliberate violation, but as a cultural difference to be accommodated. It wasn't peace, not yet, but it was the first crack in a wall of misunderstanding that had stood for a millennium. On the morning of the third day, Asher put into motion the most dangerous part of his plan. The main negotiation chamber was filled with both delegations when a Kronar warrior burst through the doors, brandishing a sword that crackled with energy. Before anyone could react, the intruder lunged directly for Asher, blade flashing in a deadly arc. "The bridge between worlds must fall," the assassin shouted as the blade descended. Chaos erupted instantly. Grimjaw bellowed commands to his guards, who moved with stunning speed to surround the attacker. Seraphine performed an emergency breathing ritual, her hands weaving complex patterns in the air as she called for Zephyrian healers. Most remarkably, both sides converged not against each other, but around Asher. Kronar warriors formed a protective circle, while Zephyrian light healers pushed forward to attend to his wound. For perhaps the first time in a millennium, the two races acted in perfect coordination, united by the shared desire to protect a third party. As Asher was rushed to the medical bay, bleeding profusely from what appeared to be a deep chest wound, he caught Grimjaw and Seraphine exchanging a glance of shocked recognition. Not hostile, not fearful, but united in concern. The medical chamber became an unprecedented scene of cooperation. Kronar guards stood vigilant outside the doors while Zephyrian healers worked within, their bioluminescent abilities uniquely suited to accelerating tissue regeneration. Ambassador Grimjaw paced the corridor, his scarred face tight with emotion. "This person is the bridge," he muttered to General Bloodmark. "We cannot let him die." The human understood both our ways when none before could. Inside the treatment room, High Priestess Seraphine supervised the healing ritual, her veiled eyes directed toward Princess Lisel. "If we don't save him," she whispered, "we will return to the ocean of hatred. Everything will have been for nothing." Lisel's horns glowed with intense concentration as she assisted the healers, her hands hovering over Asher's wound. "He will live," she declared with unexpected authority. "I will ensure it." Hours later, when Asher's condition had stabilized, a holographic transmission illuminated the center of the medical bay. Emperor Vorak's imposing figure materialized, his expression grave but thoughtful. "Today's events have proven what I hoped might be possible," the Emperor stated. "When faced with a common concern, our people set aside 1,000 years of hatred to act in concert. Asher, though you lie wounded, you have demonstrated what I needed to see, that the greatest danger comes not from weapons, but from misunderstanding each other's hearts." The Emperor's gaze swept the room, taking in the mixed gathering of Kronar and Zephyrian attendants. This moment of crisis has accomplished what centuries of formal negotiation could not. Continue on this path. As the transmission ended, Asher's eyes fluttered open. He glanced around the room, taking in the improbable sight of both races working together, then allowed himself a small, satisfied smile before drifting back to sleep. What no one in the room knew, except perhaps Lascelles, who had caught the faintest quirk of his lips, was that the assassination had been carefully orchestrated. The attacker was an actor hired by Asher, the sword equipped with a retractable blade and blood capsules. The wound, while convincing, was largely theatrical. But the reaction it had provoked was entirely genuine. 2 days later, Asher stood at the head of the negotiation table, now fully recovered thanks to Zephyrian healing techniques. The room's atmosphere had transformed completely from their first disastrous meeting. Kronar and Zephyrian representatives no longer sat in rigid opposition, but were interspersed around the table, their body language noticeably more relaxed. What we experienced during the crisis revealed something fundamental. Asher began. When faced with a common purpose, your peoples are capable of extraordinary cooperation. Now, we must build on that foundation. Ambassador Grimjaw, seated beside Princess Liesel rather than across from her, nodded thoughtfully. Without prompting, he turned to address the gathering. I wish to explain something about my people that may have been misunderstood, he said, his gruff voice unusually measured. This scar, he traced the star pattern on his chest, is our highest honor, but not because it represents violence inflicted. It represents sacrifice accepted. He looked around the table, making careful eye contact with the humans, while respectfully averting his gaze from the Zephyrians. The most honored scars among Kronar are those taken in defense of others. They are proof that we value something beyond our own survival. Murmurs of surprise rippled through the Zephyrian delegates. High Priestess Seraphine leaned forward slightly. If I may, she said, her melodious voice carrying clearly. Perhaps this helps explain the Zephyrian perspective as well. Our reverence for unblemished form and controlled gaze is not about vanity or fear. It is about maintaining the purity needed to channel healing light for others. We remain unmarked so that we may better repair the wounds of our community. Asher watched understanding dawn across faces on both sides. May I pose 2 questions to each delegation? He asked. When no objections came, he continued. For the Kronar, what makes a scar most treasured among your people? And for the Zephyrians, what is the most sacred purpose of controlled gaze? Bloodmark answered first. The most honored scars are those taken in place of another's wound, to step between danger and the vulnerable. Seraphine nodded slowly. And the most sacred gaze is that which heals, when we direct our light to mend what is broken in others. Protection and healing. Asher summarized. 2 paths to the same destination. Both of your cultures, at their core, value sacrifice for community. You simply express it through opposing symbols. The silence that followed was not tense but contemplative, as centuries of misconception began to unravel. Princess Lascelles' younger sister, Kira, who had remained quiet throughout the negotiations, suddenly spoke. Her horns glowed with determination as she rose from her seat. I volunteer, she announced, her voice clear and steady, to receive the Kronar honor mark, a single, ceremonial scar to symbolize my commitment to peace between our peoples. Gasps echoed from both delegations. Such a proposal was unprecedented, a Zephyrian willingly accepting a mark on their unblemished form. Before anyone could object, Ambassador Grimjaw stood as well. And I, he declared, will submit to the sacred site ritual, if the High Priestess deems me worthy. I would understand the Zephyrian soul as they understand ours. The chamber erupted in astonished murmurs. Asher caught Liesel's eye across the table. Her horns were glowing with a bright, hopeful gold he had never seen before. For the briefest moment, she held his gaze directly, and neither flinched away. That evening, in a smaller, more intimate council chamber, delegates from both empires gathered to draft preliminary agreements. The atmosphere was cautiously optimistic as Asher outlined his proposals. I suggest 3 foundational pillars for lasting peace, he explained, displaying holographic schematics. First, a trade accord. Kronar provides mineral resources from your mining colonies, while Zephyria shares advances in biotechnology and healing techniques. Ambassador Grimjaw nodded approvingly. Our crystalline deposits have limited use to us, but would vastly enhance Zephyrian light channeling. And our regenerative technologies could benefit Kronar warriors, Princess Liesel added, preserving the honor of their scars while preventing death from severe injuries. Asher continued. Second, cultural exchange. Regular rotations of scholars, artists, and spiritual leaders between your worlds to deepen mutual understanding. Including modified rituals, High Priestess Seraphine suggested, that respect both traditions simultaneously. Precisely, Asher smiled. And finally, a joint defense initiative, combined military outposts along your shared borders, ensuring neither empire can be played against the other by outside forces seeking to exploit your former conflict. General Bloodmark's scarred face broke into a rare smile. Fighting alongside, rather than against Zephyrian light-wielders, a formidable alliance indeed. As the discussions continued into the night, something remarkable happened. Jokes were cautiously exchanged, personal stories shared. The rigid formality that had characterized all previous interactions between the races began to dissolve into something approaching genuine camaraderie. When Asher finally called an end to the session, he noticed Ambassador Grimjaw and Princess Liesel deep in conversation, their heads bent close together as they discussed modifications to the cultural exchange program. Neither seemed aware of how revolutionary their simple interaction would have appeared just 3 days earlier. The signing ceremony took place in the Zephyrian Divine Hall, a space transformed by living light. Bioluminescent plants imported from Ovada created constellations of blue and green radiance across the ceiling and walls, while ceremonial flame crystals provided warm golden illumination from hovering platforms. Emperor Vorak himself had arrived from Zephyria, his imposing figure accentuated by ceremonial robes that amplified his natural bioluminescence to an almost blinding intensity. Beside him stood the Kronar Supreme Commander, a legendary warrior whose body bore so many honor scars that scarcely any unmarked skin remained visible. Delegates from a dozen other species filled the observation galleries, representatives from the Deathworld Alliance given places of honor near the central dais. Director Hamilton from Earth watched with poorly concealed amazement as Kronar and Zephyrian officials mingled freely before the ceremony. "You've accomplished the impossible," he murmured to Asher, who stood nearby in formal Earth diplomatic attire. 3 days to reverse 1,000 years of hatred. The diplomatic corps said it couldn't be done. Asher shrugged slightly. It wasn't diplomacy that did it. It was understanding. Emperor Vorak raised his hands, and the hall fell silent. His voice, even more powerful in person than through transmission, filled every corner of the space. Today, 1,000-year wish has closed, he proclaimed. The Kronar hegemony and Zephyrian Empire now declare balance, peace, and joining the Intergalactic Alliance network. What generations of diplomats and warriors could not achieve, understanding and courage have accomplished in mere days. As he spoke, Princess Kira stepped forward, her unblemished blue skin glowing with solemn purpose. Beside her, General Bloodmark held a ceremonial blade that gleamed in the mixed light of the hall. With careful precision, witnessed by all, the general drew the blade across Kira's outstretched arm, creating a single, perfect crescent mark. Rather than showing pain, the young princess's horns glowed with pride as she displayed the mark to the assembly. "I bear this honor scar," she announced, "as a bridge between our peoples. May it remind us that understanding sometimes requires sacrifice." Ambassador Grimjaw then approached High Priestess Seraphine, kneeling before her with his head bowed. The priestess removed her ceremonial veil, revealing eyes that shone with intense purple-blue light. placing her hands on either side of the ambassador's face. She slowly raised his gaze to meet hers directly. For a tense moment, nothing happened. Then Grimjaw gasped, his scarred features transforming with wonder. The priestess's light flowed between them, creating patterns of luminescence that traced his scars without diminishing them. When they separated, Grimjaw's eyes held a new understanding. "I have seen," he said simply, his voice rough with emotion. "And I have been seen." As the formal treaty was signed with the genetic imprints of both rulers, celebrations erupted throughout the hall. Kronar warriors performed their traditional Scar honor dance, while Zephyrian light dancers created spectacular patterns of bioluminescence that complemented rather than competed with the Kronar movements. Asher found himself standing beside Princess Liesel, watching their peoples celebrate together for the first time in recorded history. "You planned the assassination attempt," she said quietly, not looking at him directly. "It wasn't real." Asher tensed slightly. "How did you know?" "Your smile when you woke in the medical bay. Too satisfied for someone nearly killed." Her horns flickered with amusement. "It was brilliantly effective. Sometimes, people need to see their own reactions to understand their true values." Asher replied, "Both your peoples chose to save rather than fight when presented with a common cause." Liesel's hand found his, their fingers intertwining. "My father has requested that you remain as a permanent cultural liaison between our empires," she said, her voice carefully neutral despite the pink glow emanating from her horns. "Would you consider such a position?" Before Asher could respond, Emperor Vorak's voice rang out once more. "As our final act of unification," he proclaimed, "I propose a bond more personal than political. Princess Liesel of Zephyria has requested permission to form a union with Asher of Earth, whose wisdom has brought us peace. Does any delegate object to this alliance?" The hall fell silent with shock, then erupted in thunderous approval. Asher turned to Liesel in astonishment, only to find her horns glowing the brightest gold he had yet seen, the Zephyrian color of absolute certainty. "You planned this?" he asked, unable to keep the wonder from his voice. "Peace requires courage," she replied, echoing his words from days earlier. "And sometimes, love does too." 3 months later, the grand ceremonial hall of Vox Ultima hosted a wedding unlike any before it. Delegates from 100 worlds gathered to witness the union that symbolized the new peace between ancient enemies. Asher wore traditional Earth formal attire, modified with elements of both Kronar and Zephyrian design. The dais coordinate fabric shimmer, with subtle patterns that echoed the ceremonial scars of Kronar tradition, while threads of bioluminescent material, a gift from Zephyrian artisans, created flowing light patterns across the dark material. Most notably, his left forearm bore a single, perfect scar, not from violence but from choice. General Bloodmark had performed the honor marking himself, using an ancient blade reserved for only the most significant ceremonial occasions. Princess Liesel entered the hall in traditional Zephyrian robes that seemed to capture starlight itself. Her horns reflected rainbow colors throughout the chamber, and the ceremonial jewel at her forehead emitted a gentle pulse of bioluminescence that matched her heartbeat. When her eyes met Asher's, there was no pain or violation, only the sacred flame of Zephyrian soul sight, freely given. They stood before Emperor Vorak and the Kronar Supreme Commander, representatives of powers that had sought each other's destruction for a millennium, now united in blessing this union. Asher spoke first, his voice steady despite the emotion evident in his eyes. "In this moment, under the flame of mutual respect, I vow to keep this scar as a reminder. Sacrifice must be used to protect peace. I vow to look at you with my whole heart, as you have given me sacred sight, the most sacred gift of the Zephyrian race. Through understanding, we found connection. Through connection, we found peace. Through peace, we now find love." Lisel responded, her musical voice resonating with harmonics that stirred emotions in every species present. You risked your life to save 2 races. I vow to offer this sacred site, so that together we illuminate the future. Each gaze I give you is an eternal testament to peace. Where once my people saw only violation in being truly seen, you have taught us that being recognized for who we truly are is the greatest gift of all. I give you my light, freely and forever. As they completed their vows, Ambassador Grimjaw and High Priestess Seraphine stepped forward, carrying ceremonial cloths, one bearing the scarification patterns of Kronar, the other woven with the light-capturing threads of Zephyria. These were bound together around the couple's joined hands, symbolizing the unbreakable bond between not just 2 people, but 2 civilizations. The unified cloth glowed with combined energies, the kinetic power of Kronar honor marks and the bioluminescent light of Zephyrian soul sight, creating a new pattern that belonged to neither tradition alone, but represented something entirely new. 3 months after the historic wedding, Asher found himself standing on the observation deck of the Unity Star, a new vessel jointly commissioned by both empires. As the newly appointed intergalactic cultural advisor to the Galactic Assembly, he had been tasked with mediating similar conflicts throughout known space. Beside him stood Lisel, now serving as Zephyrian peace ambassador, her diplomatic skills proving as formidable as her royal lineage. Together, they had already helped resolve 3 territorial disputes that had previously seemed intractable. Their current mission would be more challenging. A distant colony on the edges of Kronar space had come under attack from an unknown force. Both empires had dispatched aid, creating the first joint Kronar-Zephyrian defensive operation in history. As Asher gazed out at the starfield before them, he felt Liesel's hand slip into his. Her touch still sent that same electric spark through him, a connection that transcended their biological differences. "What are you thinking?" she asked, her horns glowing with the soft blue of contentment. "That the war doesn't just end with treaties," he replied thoughtfully. "The war ends in every heart willing to try to understand perspectives different from their own." He turned to her, meeting her gaze directly, an act that had once been taboo, but now represented their most intimate connection. "And if a person like me can help change the course of a galaxy," he continued, "then anyone can. That's the most important lesson of all." Lisel's light pulsed in agreement. From misunderstanding to understanding, from fear to respect, from respect to cooperation, from cooperation to love. Her horns shifted to the gold of certainty. Perhaps that is the natural evolution of all relationships, when given the chance. Below them, the joined fleets of Kronar and Zephyrian ships moved in perfect formation, their combined technologies creating defensive capabilities neither could have achieved alone. Soldiers who once would have killed each other on sight now trained together, learning to complement their different fighting styles. Asher smiled as the Unity Star prepared to jump to light speed, carrying them toward new challenges and opportunities. 3 days to end 1,000 years of war, he mused. Imagine what we might accomplish in a lifetime. As the stars stretched into streaks of light around them, Liesel's fingers tightened around his. "We already know what lies at the end of hatred," she said softly. "Now, let's discover what lies beyond understanding." The ship surged forward, carrying not just 2 people, but the hopes of civilizations that had discovered, at long last, that their differences could be their greatest strength when bridged by compassion and courage.